From the catacombs of Paris to the secret British base at Menwith Hill, here are 10 forbidden places no one wants to visit. Menwith Hill is an American intelligence base located in the Yorkshire countryside of the United Kingdom. This station, whose activity keeps a part of mystery, has for function to help the United States to plan its military operations. If we know this, it is thanks to the whistleblower Edward Snowden. He managed to penetrate the confidential data of the secret base and communicated them to journalists. His goal, as he says, is to tell the public what is being done in their name. Edward has established that Menwith Hill is not just a research center for communications technology, but has several other important purposes: to collect and transmit sensitive data and to use it for military planning. Documents leaked in recent years tend to confirm this assertion. This British base has contributed to the implementation of American military strategies in the Middle East. In this regard, a recent investigation by The Guardian suggested that the information gathered by this station may have been behind the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani by American forces in 2020. Edward Snowden's disclosures were therefore serious. Menwith Hill would locate the enemies targeted by the Americans. Edward Snowden, like all whistleblowers, was hunted down, accused of espionage, and considered an enemy of the state. He had to go into exile in Hong Kong, then in Russia. There he received in 2020 the title of permanent resident. As for the secret activities of Menwith Hill, they still continue in deep secrecy. No one but the employees can physically enter. It would take a computer genius to virtually penetrate this technological fortress. The Bohemian Grove is a campsite located in Monterey, USA. It is a forest of over 1,000 acres. It belongs to a private club of San Francisco, composed of powerful and influential people who meet there every year. The Bohemian Grove is surrounded by mysteries and legends, and it is inaccessible to intruders because the security is maximum. Let's suppose that a man ventures near this forbidden zone. He wants to break through the security and enter this forbidden area, where the most powerful men in the world gather to take part in entertaining events. First of all, he will have to escape the military patrol that watches over the edge of the Bohemian Grove all year long to defend the access to the curious. These soldiers on duty can use all sorts of sophisticated surveillance tools, motion detectors, vibration-sensitive alarm systems, night vision, and thermal imaging cameras. The visitor is distraught by all this apparatus. If he's very lucky and has built a solid plan, he can escape the guard or lull suspicion and see what is going on in this club. This has already happened. Indeed, there have been a few successful infiltrations in the past. However, no matter how successful the venture, the intruder is always found out and arrested. Today, security has been tightened to the point that any intrusion is impossible. To this day, the Bohemian Grove continues to host gatherings and generate a multitude of rumors. North Brother Island is an island located on the East River Sound in New York City. Its history is as short as it is fascinating. It seems that this island is resistant to any settlement of human life. Until the 19th century, it remained uninhabited. Peace and greenery reigned there. Only birds of various species had taken up residence there. One day, it was decided to build a hospital to isolate contagious diseases. It was built to isolate contagious patients and was used for smallpox and typhoid fever patients, but it closed 50 years later. War veterans populated the island a few years later, but they left because of the lack of housing. A detoxification center was built, but corruption scandals caused it to close. In addition to this series of events, there was the sinking of a steamboat, which ran aground on the coast of the island. More than 1,000 people lost their lives. The island is now deserted and closed to the public. The vegetation proliferates there, and an important colony of birds lives there at its ease. Vanguard is a deserted village located in India, in the state of Rajasthan. There is a fort built in the 16th century, of which only ruins remain today. This abandoned city has a frightening history, and according to local belief, it is populated by evil spirits. Originally, the city of Vanguard was filled with inhabitants. Among these villagers, there was a solitary cleric who, according to legend, possessed occult powers. The construction of the citadel, ordered by village headman, threw him into a rage, for it threatened to overshadow his home. He did not want anything to stand between the sun and his home. When his complaints were not heeded, he put a terrible curse on the city, which became a ruin, and all the inhabitants died. This is how the local people explain the tragic history of Bangar Fort. According to them, thousands of sorrowful souls are trapped in the city, and at night they become fierce and vindictive. This is why the Indian government forbids access to the fort at night. Indeed, from sunset to sunrise, it is illegal to enter the site, allegedly infested with malevolent spirits, and if a person dares to do so, he or she is liable to legal sanctions. Heard Island is uninhabited, volcanic Australian island in the southern Indian Ocean between Madagascar and Antarctica. In this icy piece of land, continuously plunged in the fog, there is no port, no human life, and it is necessary to sail during 1 week since the Australian west coast to reach it. This is the path taken by glaciologists who wish to study the particularities of the island. This journey of 4,000 kilometers is anything but peaceful for the researchers because the sea is stormy and the fog frequent. When they reach the shores of Heard Island, they are relieved and amazed, for they have before their eyes a sublime and austere landscape. Immense snow-covered massifs cover the island, the center of which is occupied by a still active volcano. The highest point culminates at a little less than 3,000 meters of altitude. It is the Mawson Peak, the biggest mountain of Australia. A glaciologist who visited the island said to be there is both a privilege and a danger. Indeed, the island is full of perils, cyclones and blizzards are frequent, and there are many glacial crevasses. Many have nearly lost their lives there. If by misfortune the visitors make a mistake, nobody can rescue them. It is not by chance that Heard Island is perpetually deserted. There are on the French territory spatial delimitations called red zones, to which access is forbidden. These are places ravaged by the most devastating battles of the Great War, and in which traces of highly toxic chemicals still remain. If you feel like going, despite the ban, to one of these dangerous sites, for example to the place where the Battle of Verdun took place, it is at your own risk. Indeed, this battle was such a massacre of human beings, such a debauchery of projectiles and chemical weapons, that the air, the ground, and the water of the place are also infected. The soil is soaked with arsenic. Tons of mercury circulate in the air, and lead has permeated every piece of land. If the corpses have long since been evacuated, the same cannot be said of the munitions. There are millions of unexploded shells that are slowly decaying under the ground. If walking in the devastated area inspires a feeling of contemplation, this duty of remembrance may cost you dearly, because you will breathe toxic materials that will have serious effects on your health. The best thing to do is to stay away from these areas and respect the ban. There is an old cave in Turkey that was considered since ancient times as the gateway to the underworld. This cave served as a place of sacrifice in the ancient sacred city of Hierapolis, and for a long time scientists have been fascinated by it. They have tried to unravel the mystery of this cave, where the animals, as soon as they entered, suffocated and die immediately, unlike the sacrificers who survived. Why did the priests survive and not the animals? Such a mystery occupied the imaginations, and for a long time nobody dared to enter this infernal cave, named Plutonium, after the god of the underworld. Scientists found the explanation. The basement of the cave contains a large quantity of carbon dioxide, which exhales in toxic fumes. The animals closer to the ground breathed in these noxious miasmas. As for the priests, who remained standing, they were spared. Even today, the animals that venture there die of asphyxiation. That said, even for human beings, this cave remains a dangerous place, and it would be wise to stay away from it. Among the places to which access is forbidden, we cannot avoid mentioning the catacombs of Paris. They are endless galleries plunged in the dark. They date from the Middle Ages, and are located a few meters below the ground of the capital. Visitors can only explore a very small part of them, but if you want to venture further into these bone-filled underground tunnels, you need some preparation. You'll need a light source, as it's very dark. Also, you might get lost, as the gallery is a winding labyrinth. If you are accompanied by a connoisseur, you will satisfy your curiosity, and you will leave the place without too much trouble. If you are alone and lost in this network of dizzying corridors without cookies or water, you will have to pray to survive until help comes. Finally, the adventure is perilous and not recommended, especially if you are claustrophobic and have a poor sense of direction. For 70 years, the number of inhabitants in Centralia, a town in Pennsylvania in the United States, has been steadily decreasing. In 1980, there were more than 1,000 residents, and today no one lives there anymore. If you go there, the first thing you'll see are signs warning you of multiple dangers. If you ignore these warnings, you will see startling things. For example, smoke coming from the ground. That's because since 1962, the underground of the city has been burning continuously. In that year, firemen cleaning up a dump accidentally set fire to an underground coal deposit. Since then, no one has been able to extinguish this mine fire, which extends over 160 hectares and is getting larger every year. You are fascinated by this partly burnt landscape, and you surely want to explore further, but that would be a bad idea. The mine fire releases toxic gases into the atmosphere. It also weakens the ground, so that subsidence and earthquakes sometimes occur. There are, for example, many cracked roads. Over the years, all the inhabitants of this town had to leave, and the buildings were gradually destroyed by the local government. In short, the city of Centralia is not about to become a tourist attraction. In Mexico, drug trafficking and the violence that results from it is a scourge that the state is struggling to combat. For the past 15 years, the police and the army have been waging a fierce war against drug trafficking organizations. In this fight, Mexican soldiers are in the front line, and their operations aim to eradicate illicit crops and dismantle the cartels. In 2011, in Baja California near the US border, Mexican soldiers made an extraordinary discovery. It was in the middle of the desert, a huge marijuana plantation covering an area of 120 hectares completely covered by a black fabric. This field was irrigated by an elaborate device. There were houses in the vicinity where lived the farmers who had fled at the approach of the military. This marijuana field was the largest ever discovered in the entire continent. According to the Army General, the plantation was worth more than $160 million to the drug traffickers. The owners of this field were probably part of the Sinaloa cartel, the most dangerous in Mexico. The soldiers, therefore, were pleased with this victory over their worst enemies. But they cannot get their hands on the head of the cartel, Joaquin Guzman, the drug king. Indeed, he escaped them for several more years. Moreover, this criminal was so rich and his activities so diversified that the eradication of this field should hardly have moved him. But the armed forces managed to capture him after several attempts in 2016. However, their war against drug traffickers continues, and it will probably last for a long time. Thus ends this video, where you have been able to discover 10 places whose access is either prohibited or very inadvisable. If you had to visit only one of these places, which one would it be and why? Feel free to answer in the comments section.